Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Lisa, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you. It's a pleasure to have you. Let's jump straight into it. Tell us the story, Lisa. What got you into consulting and more specifically, sales leadership in the first place?
So I can tell you the pretty story or I can tell you the real story.
I want the dirty and ugly story. So the real one.
Dirty and ugly story is
Yes.
I had a baby and I worked for a jerk. And I had to go out on my own.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders,
Sorry.
where we talk about jerks. Okay, that's
I
terrible.
worked-
What happened?
Yeah, I worked for a sales and leadership development company a good long time ago. And we had some great sales and leadership development programs. I was the VP of sales, had a great career track, and I had a baby. And the guy that I worked with, the guy had taken over as the president of the company, was a real jerk. And I just realized I'm not going to work 70 hours a week for a jerk when I've got this baby. So, a lot of people start their own company with a dream. My dream was not working for this guy.
Which is a dream in and of itself. So
Yeah.
what?
And that was about 30 years ago. And so I went out on my own and ended up with a really successful company. And I have just sent him 1,000 blessings ever since. And that baby ended up being my business partner years later. So it worked out great.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So the baby is your business partner. So is
Right.
she working with you now?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Master's degree in organizational psychology, co-author of the book. So worked out great for everybody.
Looks like it did indeed. See, I'm always a fan of the real dirty story rather than the beautiful one, which ended up being a very beautiful one as well.
It did.
So how, and I guess that was we alluded to that, but what's the problem that you help solving now together with your daughter, Lisa? What is it that you help organizations achieve?
So my background was always in sales. And like I said, I'd been a sales leader. I had worked for Procter & Gamble for a number of years. And then I had gone to work for this sales leadership company. And the challenge that we always have with sales teams is we always tell sales teams the same thing. Focus on the customer, focus on the customer. But then when push comes to shove, the number one narrative is hit the number. And so those two things are often at odds. And companies spend a lot of time trying to accomplish these two seemingly disparate goals. Hit the number, which all the shareholders care about, which the CEO cares about, which everybody gets comped about. But then they also tell the sales team to focus on the customer. And so the problem that we solve for companies, and I eventually wrote this book, Selling with Noble Purpose, is the end game is actually improve life for the customers, and the numbers are the lagging indicator. And so what happens is we try to get salespeople to think like CFOs, and it never works because salespeople are not CFOs. Instead, we need to set up the compensation system and set up the pricing system so that salespeople are incentivized to solve the problem for the customer with whatever they're selling. And so what we do is we work with organizations to, quote, sell with noble purpose, which means getting the entire team aligned around how are we improving life for customers, and then having the sales comp and the sales system aligned so that those are not at odds with the end game. So that's what we do.
Are you familiar with the trusted advisor? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I am. And one of the challenges, which is a great model to be a trusted advisor to your customers, but one of the things that I saw happening over the years is you've got the sales training department saying, be a trusted advisor. Here's what we want you to do. Be a trusted advisor with your customers. And then the VP of sales says, yeah, except the last day of the month and the last day of the quarter. On those days, get the deal over the line. And so that is one of the problems.
I had Charles Green on the show. It'd be interesting to make a kind of a debate episode, maybe food for thoughts for a follow-up one. So I'm a bit interested to take a tangent here, Lisa, because obviously, so sales is what I've done and what we still do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like this couldn't be more true around like, yeah, guys, customer focus, not like, not benefits, not features, but benefits, not output, but outcomes, right? Focusing on the relationship, focusing on people.
Yeah, it's not new. We all know this.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, when you lead a sales team, what you're going to look at the end of the month, quarter, year, whatsoever, is like, how many leads did I get you into a call with? How many of those calls transform into a qualified, so sales qualified leads, and how many of those people closed? And if we are not hitting the targets, then the bosses or the shareholders, whatever, are going to be like, guys, what is happening? So whilst what you describe is true, and I would love that for us, the sales world, how do you apply this? How do you make people not focus so much on sales whilst it is the very nature of the job?
So it's the difference between what are you coaching and leading to versus what are you measuring. If I am coaching an Olympic runner, I am measuring their time. They are not going to win because of their attitude. They are going to win because they're the fastest one. But if I sit there and measure their time every single day and go faster, 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 at a certain point, they're not going to get any better. I've got to look at their strength and conditioning. I've got to look at their nutrition. I've got to look at their sports psychology. I've got to look at all these things. And the mistake that we make is we think that by telling salespeople, hit the number, hit the number, hit the number, that somehow they're going to hit the number bigger. And so the way that you do this is, if I am, and I'll just go back to that example, if you are about to go into a sales call, I don't want to go, okay, I need you to close this. I need you to close this. That is the exact wrong thing I need to say to you. Instead, I need you to be thinking, what is the number one problem this customer has? How can you help them understand that problem better? How can you put urgency to that problem? How can you put some metrics to that problem that they have? How can you show them how you might be the one to help them solve that problem? That's the conversation I need to be having with you. And so to give you a perspective, what we have seen is that companies with a purpose bigger than money outperform the market by over 350%. And the reason for that is they sell bigger deals at a higher margin, because companies that are just trying to sell, back to the trusted advisor, companies that are just trying to sell deals become very transactional. And what's ironic and sort of a meta moment is you see even consultants get into this. Like, I've worked with some of the big consulting firms, and when some of the bigger firms or even smaller firms start competing on fees, that's just a race to the bottom. They're having the wrong conversation with their customers. And that applies whether you're selling consulting services, whether you are selling widgets, whether you are selling software. If you are starting to have this us versus them pricing conversation, you're in a transactional sale right now. And the odds of you selling something at a high margin, something that sticks, something where you're the preferred supplier, the odds of that are very low.
It's so funny. I'm fascinated by Oz the mentalist lately. I'm just looking into a lot of the things that he does. Crazy guy. Nothing to do with sales, although he has. So now he's like in the show business. But he used to train corporations, especially their sales teams. And one of the questions that he mentioned on the podcast was that he was getting a lot was like, hey, I feel uncomfortable with sales. How do I build trust and like build that rapport, that premium relationship before we talk about the sale? And he was like, just be honest, like show some vulnerability. Like, hey,
right.
This is what I'm, trying to do here, potentially help you if there is a fit. I've not done it many times. Yes, I'm a representative of this company, but eventually at the end of the call, I'd like us to work together if it makes sense. And if not, I'll tell you.
Right.
And with that said, I was like, yeah, that's a good reframe. But you're very upfront about the fact that there are going to be some transactional aspect of this conversation, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be into that. So is that something you also integrate into the development that you do? Or like how do you see, how much do you need to be honest and upfront about, hey, this is a sales call versus we're going to see where this goes? How do you think about it?
Yeah, we're going to see where it goes is a sales call. So one of the things that we have to understand is sales is one of the few professions that we've allowed to be defined by the people who do it badly. And so when we have this impression of people who are really salesy, they're the ones that are bad at it. They have a really low close rate. And so we're going to see if there's something here. That is a sales call. So our research shows that the best salespeople can tolerate uncertainty. And when you think of the best salespeople, you think of the people who are really confident, the people who are really talkative, the people who have a great, charisma. But actually, one of the hidden hallmarks of top salespeople is that they can tolerate uncertainty. And the ability to tolerate uncertainty gives you a confidence. And it's the confidence to say, let's see, I'm pretty confident I'll be able to help you. I'm not 100% certain, but confident enough to explore what's going on with you. And it doesn't mean, tell me what keeps you awake at night, or let's just blue sky this, or I'm going to come in here, with a blank sheet of paper and not know anything. I mean, a little thing called the internet has been invented and you should have done your homework. And so it means coming in and saying, I know you're in a tough competitive landscape. I know the margins in your industry are shrinking. We've helped a lot of people with similar things. Now, here's where the great salesperson changes. Instead of saying, let me tell you how I'm going to help you, they say, let's talk about how you're addressing these shrinking margins and see if there might be a way I can help you with this. And so they're having that conversation about the customer's issues, and they're open to the idea that I may or may not be able to help them. And so this applies to whether you're selling software or if you're selling consulting. You need to have your lane of expertise very well defined, but then the conversation is about the customer's issues. And you're bringing some level of expertise, and what your level of expertise enables you to do is have a very intelligent conversation about the customer's issues, not a very intelligent conversation about yourself.
And I was on mute. I like the way you roll, Lisa. What's
Do you have any children?
Not yet, but I wish someday for sure. Why?
Okay. So here's the difference. So I obviously have had a child. So if someone in your office comes back to work, here's the way to think about it, and they've had a baby, and you and I are both nice people, and we're going to say, so how's the baby doing? Because we're nice, and having a baby is a big deal. You, maybe you have deep expertise in babies. Do you?
What does it look like, Lisa, you think? No, I don't actually. Actually, our CEO just had a kid, and I sent congratulations.
So maybe, and you're going to say, so how's the baby doing? You're going to have that blue sky kind of, how great. But I'm going to say, how's that baby doing? Is she about 4 weeks old now? You getting 3-4 hours of sleep? So we're both going to ask questions, but you can tell by my questions, you kind of want to talk to me about this because I know the deal here.
So that said, so here's the message I sent literally like 2 hours ago to my COO. Massive congrats for the baby girl. Wishing you her and the hubby love, health and prosperity, and sleep, though that one will be harder. So I knew about the sleep, Lisa.
So you knew enough to know about that. Yeah.
There we go.
So this is like when you think about a really good consultant, they are asking that question that's not like, look at me, I'm Ms. Smarty Pants, but it's, oh, I should probably talk to this person. Because one of the things we say in consulting, there are two things to be a successful, if you want to, I don't know if most of your listeners are working for firms or solo consultants, but there are two things that you need to be successful. And the better you are at one, the less you need the other: brand and behavior in the buyer's office. Those are it. And if you've got a big enough brand, you don't have to be as great in the buyer's office. But if you don't have a brand, you better be really good with that buyer. So if you are the solo practitioner or the small firm that doesn't have distinctive thought leadership, you can still close a lot of business if you are great in the buyer's office. And what that means is you have a very clear lane, and maybe you haven't established it with thought leadership. Maybe you have one or two articles, but you are able to, in that buyer's office, through the way you do your scoping conversations, identify a problem that has some urgency, increase the level of urgency in that conversation, not fakely, but genuinely, that the buyer sees, wow, this problem that or this potential win could be huge. The cost of solving this could be great for me. The impact of not solving it could be huge for me. And this person has huge expertise. I mean, that's the conversation that you want to be having with your buyers. And you don't have to be McKinsey to have that conversation with a buyer.
That was a hell of a tangent, but did I love it? Back to some of the questions I wanted to ask you.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to just...
On the contrary, this is why I love podcasts. Like, we go in the directions that we want. But something I was meant to ask you as well is, who do you work with? Like, is there a typical, I don't know, industry, vertical, company size that you end up helping the most? Like, who do you and your daughter work with typically?
So we have worked with some biggies. One of the biggest projects we've done recently was Hilton. And I'll tell you, the people that we work with, they tend to find us because over the course of the last 10 years, we do have a brand, and the book has done some things for us. So people call us. We work with companies that need to grow revenue, who are in businesses where there is opportunity for high growth, and that need to differentiate on something besides price. And usually what happens is they either have a product differentiation that the market is not seeing, that they need to establish that differentiation, or they might, in the case of Hilton, have a real service differentiation that they need to both accelerate with their people and make sure the market sees it. So we've worked with some people like Roche was a big client of ours. Hilton is a big client of ours. We've worked with a couple other people in the travel space. We've worked with a couple of companies that have become unicorns in the software space. And so they tend to be people that have some level of clarity that we're doing something more than just making money here. We're doing something that actually makes a difference in people's lives. And we want to articulate that. And we do want to make money at the same time. So we've worked with a number of Berkshire Hathaway companies.
Those are some biggies.
Yeah, so we've worked with a number of biggies. We worked with a big crane company. We worked with a big concrete company. You might not think concrete is very differentiated, but you try living your life without concrete. Holds up half the world.
You know, there is this short from the gentleman, I don't remember his name, which is terrible, but that explains the least sexy the industry is, the more money there is to be made for ambitious people. And it's like,
that can kind of be true. Yeah.
When you tell me concrete, I'm like, that sounds boring as hell. I'm sure there is lots of money to be made if you do it right.
Yeah.
And you do need concrete.
You do need concrete. And I'm going to take up for the concrete people. It is not boring, because you get concrete, the whole world the whole world falls apart. So we have worked with concrete and plumbing, and I can sit right here and tell you a lot more about concrete and plumbing than I ever knew before, and why they are incredibly important to humanity's day-to-day existence. Now, having said that, I did get to stay at the Conrad Hotel in Singapore, and that was very nice. It had concrete and it had plumbing. It also was fabulous. But like Hilton was a good example. So they have these beautiful high-end properties. Their purpose is to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality. And so naturally, they want the people at these beautiful high-end properties to feel the Hilton difference. But you're also going to go to the Hilton Garden Inn in Boise, and you need to feel that too. So they need every single person, from the highest end to the people working in housekeeping, to have a direct connection to their customers. And so I worked with the president of Hilton, and we did a roadshow all literally around the world. And we trained everybody and got it to the point where every general manager, every, shift manager of every Hilton all the way around the world understands, and you can look it up and hear them talking about it on some of their podcasts, understands that we're not just running people in and out of these hotels. We actually have a purpose here set by our founder 100 years ago. And the two lanes that we work on as a business, you talk about metrics, the two success metrics that we measure ourselves on as a business, and Hilton hit both of these were, for us, it's revenue. And Hilton had record earnings in the years after we worked with them. And the other metric that we measure ourselves on is Hilton was voted a best place to work by the employees, which was a record for a hospitality company. I don't know if you've ever worked in hospitality. If it's really nice for the guest, it's really hard for the workers. And so that was a big deal. So those are the two lanes that we work on, profitable revenue growth and employee engagement.
How do you sign Hilton? How do you know what? Sorry, let me rephrase that question before we get to the signing. How do you get the attention of Hilton? How do you get the attention of, I suspect it was Roche Pharmaceuticals. How do you get attention from those biggies? What has worked for you, Lisa, to brand and attract this type of people?
There is not an easy answer to that. If I was listening to, 15 years ago, Lisa would have asked that question. That is a long play. And it's a harder play than it ever was before. So I'll tell you a couple of things. The easy answer is write a best-selling book, but that took 15 years. This is the second edition of this book. The short answer is distinctive thought leadership. Something that is very distinctive. That takes a long time to get there. I didn't go, hey, what is my distinctive thought leadership? I saw a problem. I was able to name it and frame it, which was this transactional sales issue. It was very real to me, and it was something that I felt very passionate about. I thought sales was really a derided profession, and the best salespeople I knew cared very deeply about their customers. And so I really wanted to come up with a way to frame that profession differently. So it doesn't have to be something that big. It can be something as simple as an article about this is what I believe about X. This is what I believe about lawyers, accountants. It can be something simple. So if I was going to start today, I would start with writing a small article. This is what I believe about X. I would put it on LinkedIn. I would turn it into a PDF. I would send it out to people I know. And I would try and do it in a way that isn't necessarily puffery for yourself, but is really, what is the thing that I care very deeply about that I think would be helpful to people, that they could read it and it would be helpful to them whether they call me or not. That would be what I would start with. I also spoke at a lot of conferences. The first edition of this book, I had a mentor who writes a lot in the consulting space. He wrote Value-Based Fees, Alan Weiss. His work was really helpful to me. And he said, you really have something here. You should speak for free if you have to. And I did that. And that attracted the attention. I did not start with companies like that. I started, shout out to Bender Plumbing, who's early. I started out with some early people like that. And so I wouldn't worry that much about trying to land a big client like that. Hilton was probably the biggest client we've ever had. I was a solid 15 years in. I would worry about writing something, or if you're not a writer, do a PowerPoint deck that just says, this is the problem in my industry that I really think could be solved in a different way, and send it out to people and try to get some clients that you think you can really help, because that's going to be the most important thing. Rather than landing a name client, land a client that you can really, really help, because you'll learn so much. the first edition of Selling with Noble Purpose had 12 clients listed in it that we gave as examples. That was literally all the clients we had. Like every single client we had was in that book because we didn't have any other ones.
Thank you for that, Lisa. I think this shows that, and I think any consultants would know that, but getting the big brand, getting the big attractiveness, not only takes time, it does take time, but it also takes consistent work of showing up, of being in front of people, of coming up with a great product. And by this, I mean, that's what I talk about a lot with some of the people we work with. It's like anything that is scalable, give it away for free. The people who would, or like $20, right? The price of a book. What I mean is the people who would buy from you the 6-7 figure consulting projects aren't the ones who are going to take your free content and try to do it themselves anyways.
No.
Like I hardly see Hilton checking the book and being like, cool, handing it over to their VP of sales or whoever and be like, hey, go and figure it out. No, they will hire the person who told them, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is why it's not working, this is what you should do. If you want help on the implementation, call me.
And by the way, they did do a lot of the project themselves.
Interesting.
Because they know how to scale at a global level. I'm a small boutique firm. They know how to scale at a global level. They needed us and they needed a team. The other thing I'll tell you is I early on worked for some big firms and it wasn't great because I didn't have the differentiated IP. They didn't value me. I did better with some of those smaller companies that thought I was really cool and needed me more in the beginning. So this idea, I did a big project for EY 15 years ago and I was just a day player. I mean, I was fine. I was one of many people they just hired to come in and do stuff. And then 15 years later, they wanted me to come speak at something. And so get yourself, if you've got, if you've done some best-selling book and people want you, great. But it is a longer game. One of my good friends wrote a book called The Long Game, Dory Clark, and she really, she and I know each other for about 15 years, and she really identifies how to do this. And so it's unrealistic to think that you would land those big clients and you will be very commoditized on those if you get them first. You will be more distinct on the smaller clients first, and then you will have a good track record that gets you into those big clients. And those small clients can pay just as well. I've had some big clients that had egregious terms that wanted us to do all kinds of stuff. So don't romanticize them. I mean, Hilton is a great client. I will tell you, Hilton is fantastic. But back in the day, everyone wasn't great.
My God, I'm clicking on unmute and it still doesn't work. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So I love this. I love the way you roll. And I guess the question that always comes after this is like, how do you sell? But I guess this was the whole topic of the episode here. A question that I meant to ask you that I'm a bit curious about, especially with everything that you've achieved in those last 15 years. What's your number one challenge right now? What's that one nut that you're trying to crack that once you crack, you're gonna take the whole thing to the next level, if that's the goal, right? What would that be for you?
I think the biggest challenge I have right now, I would say I have two challenges. One, I'm not sure I am going to crack. One challenge has always been scale. And that is always the challenge for a small boutique firm that does have differentiated IP because everybody wants you. My daughter's the co-author of this book, Elizabeth Latardo. People now want her. But we have a couple of contractors that work with us, but it presents a scale challenge, which I don't know if we're going to crack that. I mean, we're not as famous as some other people out there, but people still do want us. So I'm not sure if we're going to crack that. And that leads me to sort of the other challenge is the thought leadership space is so crowded right now. I was one of the early people on the purpose band. I don't even want to say bandwagon because it wasn't a bandwagon. I was like one of the first ones out there. I mean, there were a handful of people. And now I feel like everyone is talking about it. And I'm kind of like a pick about this. They're getting it wrong. And it's really pissing me off. Um, because a lot of people are talking about purpose like ESG. Purpose is not ESG. ESG is great, but that's not purpose. Purpose, from my vantage point, is how does your company improve life for customers? Not how are you a good corporate citizen, not how are you being nice to your employees, not how are you, making the environment better. I mean, all those things are great, don't get me wrong, but your purpose is how are you making life better for customers? That is your purpose, and it is embedded in your business model. And one of my biggest challenges is all these other people are talking about it, and it's diluting the thing that was the clear lane, and people are getting confused about it. And so that is, and because the thought leadership space is so muddied now with everybody, it used to be that it was hard to write an article. And now with AI, it's not that hard, and you can write a pretty good one. So I think
Which
that's
is
my,
no, go ahead.
I think that's my biggest challenge. And people are, like I said, people are confusing ESG, being a good corporate citizen, and personal fulfillment with company purpose. And I am a good person. I care about the earth. I am someone's mother. I care about humanity. But your company purpose is how are you improving life for customers? And your job is to do that in alignment with those other things. And that's where I'm challenged right now, I'd say.
I love this. So not the fact that this is challenging for you, but more the fact that this is something that every single consultant that I talk to is struggling with, whether they admit it or not. Because in a day and age where anybody can claim, so the scalability that has always been right, consulting firms are about, hey, once you've solved the demand aspect, it's how do you solve the supply, and how do you make sure that the managing partner is not the one not only closing the deal, but also delivering everything, and how do you build that pyramidal structure that the big fours, the McKinseys are so good at building, because it's like attracting the best talent and having the whole program to make them climb up the ladder so that they become the directors, the principals, the partners of tomorrow who handle everything and who become experts and so on and so forth. I think that that muddy thought leadership space, Lisa, I just want to double down on it for a sec, because it's anybody listening to us right now, we are in a day and age where anybody can claim anything on the internet. And you've said it, like it's not that hard to come up with a decent piece of written content, and even soon video content whatsoever, thanks to AI. This is not the differentiating factor anymore. So the question becomes, what is the differentiating factor? I think it's going to be how helpful and clear and actionable the advice in that piece of content is, but also the brand behind it. Like, it's great to put good content out there, but why would you listen to it in the first place? Right? If tomorrow Warren Buffett tells me to buy a stock, I'm not going to think about it twice. I'm going to buy that stock because the guy has the credibility that he's built over the last 60 years of being one of the best investors in the world. So that brand aspect, doing something epic and getting known for it throughout the years, after 15 years, a book, speaking events rampage, if you have to do a lot, that's where the brand comes in. And then the advice that you say is applied and followed because you have this authority. So the whole question becomes, how do we build that brand so that we can scale that way?
And I think that's the challenge. And I mean, maybe being old is like an advantage now. Who knew? And I think I have a lot of really strong personal relationships, and that is proving to be really helpful. And one of my own personal failings is sort of, I'm a shiny object person, let's try that, And so, which is probably why we haven't scaled as big, because that takes a lot of self-discipline. Maybe I don't have as much of that. But I think if I was starting out now to get in, how do you do that? And that's where I wonder if going to work for, I'm probably not really going to be an advocate for McKinsey, but some of the others, going to work for some of the other firms to where you can get in front of a lot of people and you can start to build that personal relationship. Because to try and do it on your own is going to be really difficult. It's not to say you can't do it, you can, but you've got to build that personal network of people who will read something that you send or post, who will take a meeting with you, who will speak, say good things about you when you're not in the room. And I think that that's something that doesn't happen for you overnight. And this is where I'm also sensitive to, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I went to a state school. And I think people that have gone to school that, went to school remotely, that went to, that didn't go to some Ivy League, where I'm very conscious that you're at more of a disadvantage. I was a TV major at University of Georgia. I worked at the college newspaper. My friends aren't running, like, half my friends are school teachers. They're not running some giant thing. And so I think there's a real balance between leading a real transactional life where you're trying to game every minute and every person you meet with, but also being very intentional about your relationships, especially at a young age.
Amen to that. Lisa Earle McLeod, ladies and gentlemen. Lisa, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn. If you Google Noble Purpose, I'm still the one that comes up. So I should probably plug myself. I do mentor a number of younger consultants. And one of the things I like about doing that is I'm really good at helping them scope out their buyer conversations before they have them so that they can actually put together a really good proposal.
Which is important. We'll put all the links in the description, so just check it out in the description. Yeah. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on.
It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.
Was that